And here's the last installment on the unit for sensation and perception. We're going to add one more threshold to our example, or to our list of thresholds that we've talked about here in just a second. We want to talk about apparent motion first. Now, apparent motion or illusory motion, this is the false perception of motion, where the motion is either absent or perceived differently than it is. And I'll give you some examples. One that comes to mind: if you have a ceiling fan in your home, turn it on, get it going at a pretty high rate of speed, and position yourself where you're not exactly underneath it, but where you can see the fan blades, and look straight ahead. Don't look at the fan blades, but look straight ahead. If you do that, after a few seconds, the fan blades will disappear. It'll completely disappear. But if you look up at it, they'll amazingly reappear. Now, the fan really isn't disappearing, but just the appearance that it is disappearing is there. So now, autokinesis, two examples of apparent motion. Auto means self, kinesis means movement. If you look at objects long enough, they will appear to move, even when they don't. People report that they see falling stars all the time, when really falling stars are pretty rare. There have been studies done where people are placed in a dark room, and there's a tiny light source shined, or a tiny light rather shined on a screen, and people are asked to report how much that object moves. Now, the object, rather the light, never moves, but people report that it moves a little bit. Some people report that it moves a whole lot, but it really doesn't. Induced motion, this is the false perception that one object is in motion when it's actually surrounding objects that are moving. For example, it's easy to look up at the sky and it looks like the clouds and the moon are kind of moving. Well, is it the moon moving through the clouds, or are the clouds moving past the moon? Well, it depends on how you're perceiving that and looking at it. That's induced motion. Now, a better example might be is if you've ever been sitting in a parked car, like say you're at a stoplight, and all of a sudden you feel like your car's rolling back and you kind of panic for a second. Really, your car's not moving, it's a car pulling up beside of you. But for that split second, you feel like you're going backwards. That's another example of induced motion. Now, like I said earlier, the last of the three thresholds that I want to talk to you about is velocity threshold. We're talking about speed. The minimal speed an object has to be moving in order to detect this motion at least 50% of the time. Now, we can't watch grass grow, literally. It's just, it moves too slowly to see. But we can, for example, if you have a clock with a minute hand, if you watch that minute hand, you'll see it move ever so slightly, every so often. That is, for most of us, our velocity threshold. The slowest or the minimal speed something has to be moving in order to detect the motion at least 50% of the time. Now, some of these we did in class. These are examples of, these are illusions, okay? We all kind of perceive these the same way. And some of these are going to be like induced motions. Some of these slides that you see are going to give the appearance of motion when there's really none there. And I hope this works on the video. This is one that we did in a lot of my classes. This swirl right here looks to be green, and this one looks to be blue, right? This one's green, this one's blue, but they're really both the same color. They're both green. If you look at it more closely, as we did in class, you can see the green where the green meets the white, and where the green meets the white right here. The purple going through the blue, or excuse me, the purple swirls this way going through the green, makes this look blue, and the orange here makes this really stand out as green. But these are both the same color. Now, for this one, I don't know if it'll work on this slide or not. This gives the appearance of a lot of black dots. Anytime you kind of move your eyes around, you can see, but if you try to focus on one black dot, it disappears. I'm going to kind of skip through these because we did do these in class. Again, I don't know if these work with my video camera, but if you were in class, you could see these. This gives the appearance kind of like a ripple effect, like there's a layer of water over top of it. This one, if you look at the middle of it, looks like you're kind of falling down into the middle of it, sort of. So if you look at it long, and you can pause these and look at them. I'm going to kind of skip here. This one, if you look at the center where that yellow square is, sooner or later this object is going to appear to rotate, or this image is going to appear to rotate very slowly. Again, you can pause these and try them. You can probably download these as well and maybe get a better effect. Again, we covered these in class. Then you have the pinwheels. If you look at them, they're all moving in different directions. Again, you may have to download this on your own or just remember from class. If you look at one, it stops moving, but the rest of them will rotate. If you look at another one, it'll stop moving while the rest rotate. And then the last part of this unit, subliminal persuasion. I know in at least a couple classes we talked about this. Sub means below, liminal means limit. So we're talking about below the normal limit of perception. We've talked about how advertisers, in some of my classes, how advertisers have tried to use subliminal persuasion to sell products. They'll insert messages in music that are played so quickly you could never hear them, but they somehow still register. Or do they? So below the normal limit of perception. Does this really exist? Well, some people suggest it does. There was a movie theater proprietor in the 1940s who inserted a slide that simply read something to the effect of "drink more Coca-Cola." And he swore that when he inserted this slide, that by the way was up in front of your eyes for something like 1/4000th of a second, that's nothing you would ever be able to recognize and read and process. But he swore that when he did that, his Coke sales went up astronomically. And when he took the slide out, Coke sales were just normal. Department stores have been known to insert subliminal messages in their Muzak, that terrible music that you listen to when you're changing clothes and trying on clothes in a store. Messages like "Don't shoplift, it's wrong," or "Turn in thieves," to try to keep theft down, to try to keep their costs down. So science is kind of split on this. Some scientists, believe that subliminal perception does exist under certain circumstances. Other scientists and psychologists say no, you can't really prove that this exists. So there's no way to really, study it scientifically in psychology. So some believe in it and some don't, and some think maybe under certain circumstances that it might exist. We talked in class about how some musicians in the 60s and the 70s would insert messages in their music, and if you played them backwards, you could hear satanic messages. Bands like AC/DC, Styx, Kiss, Judas Priest, supposedly, if you listened to their music backwards, you could hear messages, didactic messages that were instructing you to do things. Now, some of these bands admit to doing this, other bands deny wholeheartedly that they really ever did these things. Now, extrasensory perception. I don't think we got to this in a lot of my classes. This is definitely something that lies outside of the realm of science. Does this really exist? I'm not in a position to tell you that psychics are not real. Remember my psychic story I told you at the beginning of the semester. I'm in no position to make that judgment for you. You can decide that for yourselves. However, we readily agree that within science, within the framework of science, that we can't recognize extrasensory perception because there's no way to prove this. Now, there are 4 classifications of ESP. Telepathy simply refers to communicating with thoughts only. So if I am telepathically sending you a message right now, I'm not talking, I'm just going to think it to you. There it goes. Did you catch it? What did I just send you? What kind of message did I send you? If you were telepathic, then you would be able to understand the thought I just sent you without me ever saying it. Now, clairvoyance, best definition I can give you, really it's more of an explanation. With clairvoyance, you have a receiver of information, but no sender or submitter of information. So, for example, if I had a deck of cards that were face down, I could put my hand on any card and be able to tell what it would be. That's clairvoyance. Nobody is sending me that information, but I am receiving it somehow. Now, precognition, this is the ability to forecast the future. That's all that means. Fortune tellers. Psychics, for example, supposedly have this ability. Telekinesis. This is the ability to move objects with your mind. So if I set this pin, or let's say this doll, if I set this doll right here, if I have telekinetic powers, I would be able to move it just by thinking about it. Okay, I'm trying. It's just not quite working. So yeah, we'll get rid of that. So I have no extrasensory perceptive abilities, evidently. Now, we'll kind of end with this. Occam's razor. A razor is kind of a rule of thumb, or a general rule. William of Occam, he came up with this razor. Do not assume a complicated explanation for something when a simpler one will do. that's one of the main criticisms of ESP research. There's actually research on this, and some people really believe that it exists. For example, if I come home and I set my keys on top of my TV, which I'm apt to do, and then I walk outside for 5 minutes, I come back in the house, my keys are gone. I can assume something pretty complicated. I can assume that my neighbor telekinetically, with his mind, moved my keys from the TV to an undisclosed location. That's a pretty complicated explanation for that. Or a simpler explanation might be, I have cats, and the cat probably jumped up on the TV and knocked the keys behind the TV. That's probably a better explanation. So, at any rate, that will conclude part 4 of sensation and perception. And this should catch you, all these four videos that I've sent should catch you up in any area that we may have missed in class. And hopefully this will reinforce what we already did in class as well in some cases. So make sure you have good notes on these guys. And that's it for this part. Thank you.